You know that moment when your heart feels like it's carrying more than it should. Like every beat is weighed down by a memory you can't quite shake. That's exactly where I was that night. Standing alone on the streets of a city that never sleeps. My hands wrapped around a cup of lukewarm coffee. My umbrella barely keeping the rain off my hair. And my heart shattered into pieces I didn't even know I could still feel. I thought I'd moved on. I thought I was strong enough to face the world without him. But life has this funny way of proving you wrong, doesn't it? My name is Maya, and just a few hours ago, I thought I had lost him forever. And maybe, in some ways, I had. It all started 6 months ago when love seemed endless and life felt simple. He was charming, funny, someone who made the ordinary feel magical. But like a thief in the night, he had taken more than my heart. He had stolen my trust, my peace, and left me questioning everything I thought I knew about love. I won't lie, I spent weeks trying to convince myself I was okay. I smiled for my friends, nodded along at work, even laughed at a few bad jokes that weren't really funny. But every time I closed my eyes, there he was smiling like nothing had ever happened, pretending like he hadn't broken me into pieces I wasn't sure I could ever glue back together. So that night, I wondered. I didn't know where I was going. The streets were wet, the neon lights reflecting off the puddles like a kaleidoscope of memories. And that's when I saw him, or rather, I noticed him. He wasn't supposed to be there. He didn't belong in my story. Yet, there he was, standing under the flickering sign of a small, dusty bookstore tucked between two towering buildings. He had this aura, like he belonged to some other world, a world I didn't know existed. He wasn't tall, not really, but there was something magnetic about him. His eyes, dark and curious, seemed to see right through the walls I had built around my heart. I almost didn't go in. Almost. But something I don't know. Maybe fate, maybe sheer curiosity, pushed me forward. The bell above the door jingled softly as I entered. And the warmth hit me first. Warm, scented with old paper, coffee, and something else. Something comforting. And then I saw him again, this stranger, browsing the shelves like he belonged there. He didn't look up, didn't notice me at first, but when he did, something shifted. Looking for anything in particular? He asked. His voice was calm, yet there was a subtle undertone that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. I blinked. Just wondering, I said, unsure why I was even talking to him. It wasn't like I could trust anyone these days. Not after everything. He smiled. A small, knowing smile that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Sometimes that's the best kind of searching, he said. I didn't know what it was about him, but the way he said that, like he understood more than he should, it made something inside me stir. A memory? A dream? Or maybe just a tiny flicker of hope I hadn't felt in months. We started talking, or rather, I talked and he listened. Really listened. He didn't interrupt with stories of himself or try to impress me with some charm I was already too familiar with to care about. He just listened. And when he spoke, it felt like he was speaking to the parts of me I had locked away. You know, he said softly, sometimes we think we've lost everything, but maybe what we've lost is just the wrong thing. Maybe the thing we need is still out there, waiting. I wanted to tell him. He didn't understand. That my heart was broken beyond repair. That people like him, people who made everything seem so easy, weren't real. But somehow, I didn't. There was something about the way he looked at me. the quiet certainty in his eyes that made my defenses falter. I wandered through the aisles, my fingers brushing against the spines of old books. And every so often, I caught him looking at me. Not in a creepy way, not at all. But in a way that said he saw me. Really saw me. And it scared me. "Can I ask you something?" I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. "Anything," he replied. "Why? Do you seem like you know me?" He tilted his head slightly, as if considering the question. Then he smiled, that same unsettling yet comforting smile. "Maybe I do. Or maybe I just know what it's like to feel lost." There it was again. That understanding. That spark of something I couldn't name. I felt a strange pull toward him, a curiosity that went beyond reason. Something about him was familiar, though I knew I had never met him before. And in that familiarity, a tiny thread of trust began to form. Little did I know, that night in the bookstore was the start of something that would change everything. Something that would test every belief I had about love, trust, and destiny. Something that would make me question who he really was, and maybe, just maybe, who I was meant to be. After that first encounter, I found myself coming back to the bookstore. I'm not proud of it. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the loneliness I couldn't shake, but there was something about him that drew me in. The first time I really noticed him wasn't during our conversation. No, it was later, as I browsed a shelf full of novels I wasn't sure I'd even read. I felt someone's gaze, and there he was, standing a few feet away, casually holding a book as if he'd been there forever. He didn't speak. He just looked. And when our eyes met, there was a spark. A connection that didn't make sense but felt undeniable. "Back again," he said softly, a hint of amusement in his voice. I shrugged, trying to play it cool, though my heart was doing a little dance of its own. "I like books," I replied, and instantly felt ridiculous. He chuckled, a warm sound that made the edges of my sadness soften just a little. "Books are safe," he said. "They don't judge, they don't lie. And sometimes, they help you find the answers you didn't know you were looking for." His words struck a chord. Maybe it was the way he said them, or maybe it was because I realized that for the first time in months, someone was saying exactly what I needed to hear. We started talking more often after that. Sometimes it was about books, sometimes about life, sometimes about things I hadn't even admitted to myself. He had this uncanny way of asking the right questions that made me think, made me remember things I had buried, dreams I had forgotten, fears I hadn't faced. "Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's story?" he asked one afternoon, his dark eyes serious, almost searching. I laughed bitterly. "All the time." "Then maybe it's time you write your own," he said. And I swear, I could feel the weight of those words sink into my chest. It was like he'd reached inside me and touched something I didn't even know I was holding onto. There was something strange about him, though. A subtle oddity I couldn't quite place. He would disappear for hours without explanation. Show up in places I didn't expect, and sometimes, just sometimes, he would say something that made me question whether he was really real, or if he was some figment of my imagination, created to heal the emptiness I had been carrying. And yet, I trusted him. I trusted him in ways I hadn't trusted anyone in a long time. One rainy evening, he invited me to a small cafe tucked in an alley near the bookstore. It was quiet, cozy, with soft jazz music playing in the background. We sat across from each other, the light from the hanging lamps casting soft shadows across his face. "Why do you keep coming back?" he asked suddenly, as if reading my thoughts. I hesitated. Should I tell him the truth? That I was drawn to him in ways that terrified me. That I felt like he understood the parts of me I didn't even understand. I don't know, I admitted finally. I guess I just feel comfortable here. And, well, with you. He nodded, that small, knowing smile returning. Comfort is a dangerous thing, he said softly, but sometimes it's exactly what we need. That night, we walked through the rain, sharing an umbrella. I wanted to tell him everything, my fears, my heartbreak, the betrayal that still haunted me. But I didn't. Somehow, the words felt unnecessary. He seemed to understand without them. You know, he said, glancing at me. Sometimes we meet people not because they're meant to stay, but because they remind us of who we're supposed to be. I looked at him, startled. Those words. They echoed in my mind long after we parted ways. Over the next few weeks, we grew closer. Not in the dramatic, whirlwind way that movies promise, but in a quiet, steady, deeply human way. We shared small victories and failures, books and coffee, laughter and silence. He was patient when I faltered, attentive when I spoke, and strangely, he seemed to know when I needed him before I even did. It was intoxicating. And it scared me, because the truth was, I hadn't let anyone in since him, the one who broke me. And now, here was someone who was slowly, subtly, gently unraveling all my walls. One night, I found myself asking the question I had been avoiding since I met him. Why are you helping me? He paused, leaning back in his chair, thoughtful. Maybe because someone once helped me, he said quietly. Or maybe because I've been waiting for someone like you. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to trust him. But the rational part of my brain, the part that remembered heartbreak, betrayal, and lies, whispered caution. And that whisper grew louder the night I found a small note slipped into my bag after I left the bookstore. It wasn't signed, but it said simply, sometimes the person who sees you most clearly is the one who's been watching all along. I didn't know whether to be comforted or terrified, because even as I felt drawn to him, I knew that nothing about this was ordinary. Nothing about him was ordinary. And maybe, just maybe, that was exactly the point. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how quickly my world had shifted in the presence of someone I had only just met. And for the first time in months, I allowed myself to hope. After that rainy night, I realized I was thinking about him more than I wanted to admit. And the strangest part, he wasn't even mine. We were just people who had stumbled into each other's lives at exactly the wrong, or maybe the right time. Our connection grew quietly. It wasn't the kind of relationship that demands instant declarations or dramatic gestures. No, it was something softer, something that crept in slowly, wrapping itself around the edges of my heart like a gentle tide. We would meet at the bookstore on lazy afternoons. Sometimes we'd get lost in books, our fingers brushing accidentally over the spines, and every time it happened, my pulse would spike. Other times, we'd take walks through the city, talking about everything and nothing. Music, dreams, the kind of childhood stories you never tell anyone because they feel too small, too insignificant. One day, we sat on a park bench, the golden light of the late afternoon casting long shadows across the walkway. A child ran past, chasing a loose balloon, and I felt a strange pang of longing, remembering my own childhood, the innocence I had lost somewhere along the way. Do you ever think about who you were before all of this? He asked quietly, watching the child with a distant look. All the time, I admitted. But it feels like that person is gone now. Like I don't even know her anymore. He looked at me then. Really looked at me, and I felt like he could see the pieces of myself I was still trying to hide. She's not gone, he said softly. She's just waiting for the right moment to come back. And maybe she's waiting for you to let her. I wanted to argue, to tell him that it wasn't that simple. But there was a truth in his words that I couldn't deny. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of hope, not for him, not even for us, but for myself, and that was the thing about him. He didn't push, didn't demand. He just existed in a way that made you feel safe to unravel, to be honest, to explore the corners of yourself you'd long forgotten. We laughed more than I had in months. Silly, ridiculous laughter, tripping over words, joking about our terrible taste in music, arguing about the best pizza in the city. And in those moments, I felt lighter, like I could finally breathe again. Yet, amidst all the laughter and comfort, there was always a hint of something else. A shadow I couldn't quite place. Sometimes he would disappear for hours without a word. Other times, he would smile at me as if he knew a secret I didn't. And every time that happened, a small knot of unease would form in my stomach. Why do you never tell me anything about yourself? I asked one rainy afternoon as we shared coffee at a tiny cafe. He shrugged, stirring his cup. Because sometimes the story isn't as important as the listening, I frowned. That sounds like an excuse. He laughed softly. Maybe it is. Or maybe I just want you to find the story on your own. I wanted to push further, to dig, to understand who he was. But there was something magnetic about his mystery, something that made me afraid to pull back. I wanted to know him, yes, but part of me wanted to let the enigma remain, to savor the tension between knowing and not knowing, and so our friendship deepened. We became a part of each other's routines without even realizing it. I found myself checking the bookstore at odd hours, hoping to see him. He would leave small notes in my favorite books, just enough to make me smile or think, but never enough to give away too much. One evening, as the city lights flickered on and the streets buzzed with life, he handed me a small book I hadn't seen before. For you, he said simply. I opened it to find a collection of short stories, each one about love, loss, and the unexpected ways life brings people together. On the last page, a single sentence was underlined. Sometimes the universe places someone in your path not to complete your story, but to remind you of the pieces you've been missing. I felt my chest tighten. It was like he had read my mind, like he knew exactly what I needed to hear. And maybe, in some unexplainable way, he did. We laughed, we walked, we shared quiet moments that spoke volumes. And yet, the more time I spent with him, the more I noticed the little mysteries, the way he seemed to appear when I needed him most, the way he asked the right questions, the way he sometimes vanished without explanation. There was a pull between us, subtle but undeniable, like the tide slowly drawing you in. And the more I let myself feel it, the more I realized something I had been avoiding. I was starting to care. A lot. But care came with risk, didn't it? I had learned that the hard way. The thought of opening my heart again terrified me. And yet, here I was, falling into a connection that felt both impossible and inevitable. That night, I sat alone in my small apartment, the book still open on my lap. I traced the underlined sentence with my finger, feeling an ache of longing and anticipation. Who was he? Really? Why did he make me feel so alive and so cautious at the same time? And most importantly, was this just a fleeting chapter, or the beginning of something I had been waiting for my entire life? I didn't know the answers. But for the first time, in a long time, I felt like I was ready to find out. It was a quiet Thursday evening when I first noticed the little things that didn't quite add up. At first, they seemed insignificant, small shadows on the edges of our moments together, but slowly, they began to weigh on me. He had invited me to the bookstore, as usual, for what I thought would be a casual evening of books and conversation. But when I arrived, he wasn't there. Not in the aisle we usually met, not by the counter, not anywhere. I waited, glancing around, the soft glow of the store's lamps reflecting off the polished floors. And then, he appeared, as if from nowhere, holding a book I hadn't noticed before. "Sorry I'm late," he said casually. But there was a flicker in his eyes, just a hint that made my stomach tighten. "You disappeared," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He shrugged, that same calm, enigmatic expression on his face. I had to take care of something. Nothing important. Nothing important. The word sounded innocent, but I knew better. There was always a reason behind his vanishing acts, a reason he never explained. And while part of me wanted to ask, to demand the truth, another part, the part that had grown to trust him, that had started to lean on him, was terrified of what I might discover. Over the next few days, the signs became harder to ignore. He would answer phone calls in hushed tones, pause when I asked about his past, and occasionally, when he thought I wasn't looking, he would stare off into the distance with a strange intensity. One evening, we walked through the park, and I noticed a small envelope clutched in his hand. He didn't hand it to me, didn't even acknowledge it, but the way he held it, the way his fingers tightened around it, made my curiosity spike. "Everything okay?" I asked cautiously. He looked at me, and for a fraction of a second, something almost human flickered across his face, something like guilt, or fear, or anticipation. And then he smiled. "Better now," he said, tucking the envelope into his coat pocket. I wanted to press further. I wanted to know why my heart was racing, why every little secret he seemed to hold made me both drawn to him and wary. But I didn't. I told myself it was none of my business, that some things in life were meant to remain mysteries. Still, the tension was palpable. It hung in the air between us like a fine mist, unspoken but undeniable. And as much as I wanted to ignore it, I couldn't. Then came the day of the first real hint that something was off. I had gone to the CAF where we often met, hoping to catch him before closing time. The chair across from me was empty, and I waited, and waited. And finally, when the clock had nearly struck 8, he arrived late, disheveled, and just a little different. "Traffic," he muttered, brushing a hand through his hair. But his eyes, they weren't the same. They carried a shadow I hadn't seen before, a depth that made my chest tighten. "I wasn't sure if you'd come," I admitted, my voice softer than I intended. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Of course I would," he said, but the words felt hollow, rehearsed even. That night, as I walked home under the dim glow of streetlights, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to him than he let on. Every smile, every kind word, every thoughtful gesture, it all carried a weight I didn't understand. And though part of me wanted to confront him, to demand answers, another part, perhaps the part that had grown addicted to his presence, wanted to ignore the unease, to hold on to the comfort he provided, And then came the next sign, the note. It appeared on my doorstep one morning. No handwriting I recognized, no signature, just a single line. Not everything is as it seems. Be careful who you trust. My hands trembled as I held it. Was it a warning? Was it from him? Or someone else entirely? My mind raced, circling possibilities I didn't want to entertain. When I saw him later that day, I couldn't help but ask, my voice tight with anxiety, "Did you write this?" He looked startled, almost guilty, and then shook his head. "No, I swear. I have no idea who would do that, and yet." Something in his eyes told me he knew more than he was letting on. The following weeks were a blur of tension and uncertainty. Every interaction carried an undercurrent of unease, subtle cracks appearing in the trust I had built so carefully. And yet, despite it all, I couldn't pull away. He had become a part of my world, and though my heart screamed caution, my mind whispered that maybe, just maybe, there was a reason for it all. I began to notice the patterns, the way he would appear at just the right moment. The small hints in his words, the cryptic gestures that seemed meaningless until later. He was everywhere and nowhere, present yet distant, kind yet elusive. And in that paradox, I found myself falling deeper. Both terrified and exhilarated by the mystery. Little did I know that was exactly what he wanted. The tension between us wasn't accidental, it was deliberate. Every unanswered question, every cryptic smile, every late arrival and sudden disappearance. It was all part of something I could never have anticipated, and as much as I wanted to ignore it, as much as I wanted to hold on to the comfort of his presence, I couldn't. Because the more I trusted him, the more I realized that trust itself might be the greatest risk of all. It happened quietly, almost imperceptibly. One evening, we were sitting in the little cafe near the bookstore, the one with the soft jazz playing in the background, the scent of coffee mingling with the sound of rain tapping against the windows. I had my hands wrapped around a mug of something hot, trying to focus on the steam curling into the air, when I realized he was watching me, not in a casual way, not like before, when curiosity or interest flickered in his eyes. No, this was different. There was a softness there, an intensity that made my stomach tighten. I caught myself leaning just a little closer, drawn by the way he seemed to see through every layer I had built around myself. "Are you cold?" he asked, his voice gentle, almost hesitant. No, I replied, but my voice betrayed me. I was more than cold, I was exposed, and for the first time in months, I didn't want to hide it. He reached across the table, brushing a stray strand of hair from my face. The touch was light, fleeting, yet it sent a shiver down my spine. My heart was pounding, and I had to remind myself to breathe. "You're smiling," he said softly. Am I?" I asked, trying to look away, but I couldn't. His gaze held me in place, and I realized I didn't want to look away. From that night, something shifted. Our conversations began to carry a subtle intimacy, an unspoken understanding that went beyond friendship. Every word he said seemed to linger longer, every gesture felt charged with meaning. We started taking walks through the city. At twilight, the streets bathed in golden light as the sun dipped below the horizon. He would occasionally take my hand, his fingers brushing mine just enough to send sparks along my skin, and I would feel my heart flutter in a way I hadn't felt since before my heartbreak. "Do you ever think about us?" I asked one evening, my voice barely above a whisper, as we watched the city lights reflect off the river. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, He let the silence stretch, letting me feel the weight of my question before he spoke. "I think about it," he admitted finally, his hand tightening slightly around mine. "More than I probably should." I felt my chest tighten, a mix of fear and anticipation. He wasn't just a stranger anymore. He was becoming everything I hadn't known I needed. And yet, even as I felt drawn to him, a small part of me, the part that had been shattered by betrayal, warned me to be cautious. Love had hurt me before, and the fear of it happening again gnawed at the edges of my excitement. Then came the first real moment of vulnerability. One rainy evening, we found ourselves sheltering under the same small awning outside the bookstore. The rain poured down around us, drenching the streets, but we were dry, pressed close together under the tiny cover. I don't know why I feel this way," I whispered, almost to myself. "Feel what?" he asked, his voice low, almost reverent. This pull toward you. I shouldn't feel it. I've been hurt before. I shouldn't trust someone so quickly." My words faltered as the rain splashed around us, cold and sharp. He looked at me then, his eyes soft, unwavering. "Maya, some things can't be controlled. You don't choose who touches your heart. You just notice it when it happens." And in that moment, my defenses cracked. I leaned slightly toward him, and without thinking, he leaned closer too. The world around us blurred, the rain, the city, the lights, and there was only this undeniable, fleeting closeness that made my heart race and my mind reel. We didn't kiss. Not yet. But the tension, the electricity between us was unmistakable. It was a quiet, simmering heat, a connection that didn't need words. And for the first time, I allowed myself to imagine a possibility I hadn't dared to dream of. That maybe, just maybe, love could find me again. Over the next few days, we spent more time together. Simple things, sharing meals, wandering through the park, reading in silence, side by side, became charged with a new meaning. Every glance, every laugh, every touch was a reminder that our bond was deepening in ways I couldn't fully articulate. And yet, as much as I wanted to surrender to the feelings blossoming inside me, the shadow of mystery remained. He still disappeared without explanation, still held secrets I didn't know, still carried an air of danger that made my pulse race in ways that had nothing to do with romance. It was intoxicating, maddening, and terrifying all at once. And the more I let myself care, the more I realized that the heart was a fragile thing, easy to break, impossible to guard completely, and capable of falling in ways that logic couldn't predict. One evening, as we walked home under the soft glow of streetlights, he paused and turned to me, his expression serious. "Maya, I need you to promise me something," he said. "Anything," I replied, my voice steady, though my heart was pounding. "Promise me you'll be careful," he said quietly. "With me. And with yourself. Not everything is as it seems." I blinked, startled. His words carried a weight I didn't understand. But instead of fear, I felt anticipation. A sense that whatever lay ahead, our connection was already powerful enough to survive it. And in that moment, I made a choice, one I didn't fully understand yet. I chose to trust him, to care for him, to allow myself to feel something I hadn't allowed in a long time. Love, I realized, wasn't about safety. It was about risk. And sometimes, the most unexpected person could teach you how to feel alive again. It started with a simple misunderstanding, or so I thought at first. One evening, I arrived at the bookstore, eager to meet him as we had planned. But the moment I stepped inside, I saw something that made my heart drop. He wasn't alone. A woman, beautiful, confident, and laughing in a way that made my stomach twist, was leaning close to him, talking animatedly. Their hands brushed, just slightly, but enough to make my pulse spike and a cold weight settle in my chest. I froze, unsure if I should confront him or run away. Part of me wanted to storm across the room, demand answers, rip the truth from him. But another part, the part that still trusted him, the part that wanted to believe in what we had, urged me to wait, to see if there was an explanation. And then he looked up. Our eyes met. There was a flicker of recognition, a flash of guilt, or was it surprise, in his eyes. But before I could say anything, he turned to the woman and spoke softly, words I couldn't hear. She smiled and left, and he followed her gaze, watching her disappear into the rainy night. I didn't know whether to laugh bitterly at my jealousy or cry at the betrayal I thought I was witnessing. My mind raced with questions I didn't want to ask, scenarios I didn't want to imagine. And when he finally turned to face me, I could see the shadow of something unspoken lingering on his face. Maya. I can explain, he said softly, his voice almost trembling. I shook my head, cutting him off before he could speak. I don't want to hear it, I whispered, my hands shaking. Not right now, and I walked out, the rain soaking through my coat, blurring the city lights into streaks of color that mirrored the storm raging inside me. For the next few days, everything changed. He tried to reach me, texts, calls, even leaving notes at the bookstore, but I ignored them all. Every explanation he could give seemed hollow, every attempt at connection a reminder of the betrayal I thought I had seen. But the truth was never that simple. Eventually, curiosity and the bond we had built won over my pride. I agreed to meet him at the park, the place where we had shared so many quiet moments. The tension between us was palpable, thick enough to taste. And when I saw him waiting, his expression was a mixture of guilt, worry, and something else I couldn't quite place. Maya, please, he said as I approached, his voice low, urgent. You have to listen to me. It's not what it looked like. I crossed my arms, trying to steady my voice. Then tell me. Now. He took a deep breath, eyes never leaving mine. That woman. She's my sister. I blinked. Your sister? He nodded. She's visiting from out of town. I didn't expect her to be in the city, and I didn't want you to worry, so I didn't mention it. Part of me wanted to believe him. Part of me wanted to feel relief. But another part, the part that had been hurt before, the part that had learned not to trust easily, hesitated. How am I supposed to know you're telling the truth? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. He looked down, then back up at me, sincerity written across every line of his face. Because I would never lie to you, Maya. Not about this. Not about anything that matters. The rain had stopped, leaving the park wet and glistening under the soft glow of streetlights. We stood there, the silence stretching between us, the tension both unbearable and intimate. And then, slowly, he reached out, brushing a wet strand of hair from my face, the same way he had months ago in the CAF. I know I've scared you, he said softly. I know I've made you question me. But please, don't let one moment make you doubt everything we've built. Everything I feel for you is real. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to trust him. But the wound from that brief glimpse of betrayal ran deep, and I wasn't sure if I could forgive, even though my heart was already leaning toward him. Over the next week, we tried to repair the rift. It wasn't easy. Every glance, every touch, carried the weight of suspicion. And yet, beneath it all, the connection remained. Because love, real love, doesn't disappear because of fear or misunderstanding. It fights, it bends, and sometimes it even grows stronger when tested. But as much as I wanted to trust him fully, the mystery surrounding him hadn't gone away. The strange disappearances, the cryptic notes, the secrets he didn't reveal, all of it still lingered. And deep down, I knew that the real test of our bond was yet to come. Because love, I realized, isn't just about moments of joy or shared laughter. It's about facing the shadows, confronting the fears, and discovering whether trust can survive even the deepest of secrets. And with him, I had no choice but to step into the unknown. It had been days since the confrontation at the park, and the tension between us hadn't entirely faded. I tried to act normal, but every time I saw him, every word he spoke, every gesture he made carried an undertone I couldn't ignore. I wanted to trust him, I really did, but the seed of doubt had been planted, and it had begun to grow. Then, one evening, everything changed. He called me, his voice unusually tense. "Maya, can you meet me? There's something you need to know." Something I should have told you a long time ago. My heart skipped a beat. Part of me was curious, desperate even. Another part scared and cautious, feared what I was about to hear. I found him waiting at our usual CAF, a small, leather-bound journal clutched tightly in his hands. His expression was serious, almost haunted, and when he saw me, his eyes softened, but the tension didn't leave them entirely. "I need to be honest with you," he said quietly, motioning for me to sit. "There are things about my life, things I've kept hidden, not because I wanted to deceive you, but because I wasn't ready to let anyone in." I felt a chill run down my spine. I had suspected there was more to him than he had told me, and now it was finally coming to light. "What is it?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He opened the journal, flipping through the pages to reveal photographs, notes and letters. Some were personal, some cryptic, some written in handwriting that wasn't his own. "I'm not just who I seem to be," he began. "My family, my past. It's complicated. There are people who would do anything to keep me from being here, from being with someone like you. And I've been protecting you without even realizing it." My mind spun. Protecting me? From what? He hesitated, biting his lip, then continued. "There are people from my past, from a life I can't fully explain yet, who don't want me to be happy. They would use anything, anyone, to hurt me. And I couldn't risk bringing that danger into your life without warning you." I didn't know what to say. The pieces didn't fully make sense, yet somehow they fit together with the shadows and mysteries I had noticed all along. The disappearances, the cryptic notes, the secretive behavior. It wasn't deceit. It was caution. It was protection. He reached across the table, his hand hovering near mine. "I know I should have trusted you with this sooner, but I was afraid. Afraid of losing you before I even had the chance to hold on to you." My heart ached, torn between fear and the undeniable pull I felt toward him. I don't know what to think," I admitted. "It's a lot to take in." "I know," he said softly. "And I don't expect you to understand everything right away. I just need you to know everything I've done, every secret I've kept. It's been because I care for you, because I want to keep you safe." For a long moment, we sat in silence, the hum of the CF around us fading into the background. I could see the truth in his eyes, the vulnerability, the sincerity, the deep, unspoken longing. And despite the fear and confusion swirling inside me, I felt something else too: trust. Tentative, fragile, but real. Then came the twister revelation I hadn't expected. "There's one more thing," he said, closing the journal with a soft thud. "Something you need to know about me." About us. I leaned in, heart pounding, my entire being focused on him. He took a deep breath. "I've been diagnosed with a condition. A rare illness. Something that could change my life in ways I can't predict. I didn't tell you before because I didn't want your life to be burdened by it. But you deserve to know because I care too much to hide it from you." My chest tightened. The world seemed to shift around me. Fear, sadness, empathy all collided at once. I wanted to scream, to cry, to laugh in disbelief, but most of all, I wanted to reach for him. You didn't tell me," I whispered, tears brimming. "I wanted to protect you," he said softly. "From worry, from pain, from the unknown. But hiding it doesn't feel right anymore. Not with you." And in that moment, I understood everything. The mystery, the tension, the cryptic warnings. It wasn't just about secrets or deceit. It was about love, about care, about a fear of losing someone before truly letting them in. I reached across the table, taking his hand in mine. "You don't have to protect me," I said softly. "Not anymore. We'll face this, whatever it is, together." His eyes softened. And for the first time, I saw him not as a stranger, not as a mysterious enigma, but as someone who had allowed himself to be vulnerable. Someone who trusted me enough to reveal his truth. And in that moment, I realized something important. Love isn't about perfection. It isn't about safety or certainty. It's about trust, courage, and choosing to be with someone even when the future is unknown. After he revealed his condition, everything between us shifted. There was no more pretense, no more guarded moments. The tension, the mystery, the fear, all of it became a backdrop for something more real, more urgent: our connection. We spent the following days carefully navigating this new dynamic. Every touch, every glance, every word was charged with meaning. Even mundane things: sharing a cup of coffee, walking through the drizzle, flipping through old books, felt profound. It was as if the world had narrowed, and we existed only for each other. One evening, we found ourselves sitting on the steps of the bookstore after closing. The city lights reflected off the wet pavement, creating a kaleidoscope of colors around us. He turned to me, his expression gentle but intense. "Maya," he said softly, "I don't know what the future holds. I don't know what challenges will come, or how hard it will be. But I know one thing: I don't want to face it without you." My heart ached at the raw honesty in his voice. "Neither do I whispered, leaning closer. And then, for the first time, our lips met. It wasn't rushed or desperate or dramatic. It was tender, a slow recognition of the feelings we had tried to deny. It was the culmination of months of shared moments, laughter, tension, and trust. The kiss lingered. And when we finally pulled away, the world felt brighter, softer, as if our bond had illuminated everything around us. But even in that moment of intimacy, the shadow of mystery remained. His secrets, his past, his illness, all of it hovered like a silent storm on the horizon. And I knew that while we had found each other, the journey was far from over. The next few weeks were a delicate dance of closeness and caution. We laughed, we shared meals, we explored the city together. But there were moments when he would disappear without explanation. Moments when I would find cryptic messages that hinted at dangers I couldn't yet understand. And then came the incident that would test us more than anything else. It was a rainy night when I received a message from him. Meet me at the park. Now. It's urgent. My pulse quickened. Something in the phrasing, the urgency, sent a shiver down my spine. I grabbed my coat and ran, the rain soaking my hair and clothes. My heart pounding in rhythm with the thunder above. When I arrived, he was there, drenched, pacing the empty path under the flickering lampposts. His face was pale, his hands trembling slightly. Maya, he said, voice tight, I need to tell you something important. Something I should have told you sooner. I felt a lump in my throat. What is it? He took a deep breath. There are people, dangerous people, who are looking for me. For reasons I can't fully explain yet. But they'll stop at nothing, and I need you to trust me completely if we're going to get through this. Fear collided with adrenaline in my chest. I wanted to ask questions, to demand details, but instead, I nodded, because deep down, I knew he needed me, not just as a companion, but as someone who could understand, someone who could stand beside him when the storm came. We spent the night huddled together under the awning, planning, whispering, and holding each other close. It was terrifying, exhausting, and yet, it felt more intimate than anything we had shared before. Because love, I realized, wasn't just about warmth or laughter, it was about standing together when the world threatened to tear you apart. As the rain subsided and dawn broke over the city, I realized something profound. I had fallen completely, irrevocably, for him. And I would follow him into the unknown, no matter what secrets, dangers, or challenges awaited us. Because sometimes love isn't safe. It isn't easy. But it is the only thing that makes the risks worth taking, and with him, I had learned that the heart's courage can surpass the mind's fear. That vulnerability can become strength, and that even in the shadow of uncertainty, love can shine brighter than anything else. The night air was thick with tension. The city around us seemed quieter than usual, as if it too sensed the danger lurking nearby. Ever since he had revealed that people from his past were searching for him, every step felt uncertain, every shadow potentially threatening. Maya, stay close, he whispered, his hand gripping mine tightly as we navigated the narrow streets. The shadows stretched long across the pavement, flickering with the passing headlights of distant cars. I nodded, though fear tightened my chest. My trust in him had grown, but the unknown still loomed like a dark cloud over our budding relationship. We reached the edge of an abandoned warehouse district, a place he claimed was safe enough for the night. The streets were slick with rain, the distant hum of the city barely audible over our quickened breathing. Why here? I asked quietly, trying not to sound panicked. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he scanned the area, eyes sharp and alert. It's isolated. They won't expect us here. But we have to be careful, they could be anywhere. I felt my pulse spike. Every instinct screamed danger, yet I trusted him enough to follow. Together, we moved like shadows, careful, silent, our steps almost synchronized. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Suddenly, movement caught his eye. He froze, pulling me behind a large crate. My heart thudded violently in my chest as I saw two figures moving in the distance, their faces obscured by shadows. They're here, he muttered, barely above a whisper. Stay calm. Follow my lead. My hands trembled as he guided me through the maze of crates and abandoned machinery. Every corner we turned, every creaking metal beam, sent a jolt of fear through me. And yet, in the midst of that fear, I realized something profound. I wasn't alone. He was here. protecting me, guiding me, trusting me to stay with him. The figures grew closer, and I caught glimpses of their intentions, cold, calculating, threatening. My stomach churned, and for a moment I thought of running, of hiding somewhere safe and leaving this all behind. But I couldn't. Not now. Not after everything we had shared. Then came the first confrontation. One of them stepped into our path, blocking the narrow alley, going somewhere. The figure sneered, voice low and dangerous. He stepped in front of me instinctively, his eyes locked on the intruder. "We're not looking for trouble," he said calmly, though his body was tense, ready for anything. The intruder laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the deserted streets. "Trouble finds you whether you like it or not." Time seemed to slow. My pulse thundered in my ears as I watched him handle the situation, quick, precise, almost instinctual movements that revealed a side of him I hadn't seen before. This wasn't just the charming, mysterious man I had grown to love. This was someone trained, someone capable, someone dangerous in ways I couldn't fully comprehend. I felt a surge of fear, but also admiration. And in that moment, I realized just how deeply I had fallen for him. The fear of losing him, of losing us, was almost unbearable. The confrontation ended as quickly as it began, the intruders retreating into the shadows with threats lingering in the air. He exhaled, tension leaving his shoulders in small bursts. "Are you okay?" he asked, turning to me, his hand still gripping mine tightly. I nodded, though my legs felt like they were trembling. I think so." He pulled me close, and for a long moment, we held each other, silent in the aftermath. The danger hadn't passed entirely, but in that embrace, there was a promise that we would face whatever came next together. The rest of the night was a blur of careful movement, whispered plans, and quiet moments of connection. Each time we found a safe space to rest, I felt the weight of everything pressing down. Yet I also felt an unshakable bond forming between us. By the time dawn broke, painting the city in soft shades of gold and pink, we were exhausted, soaked, but unbroken. And as we stood together, watching the sun rise over the skyline, I realized something powerful. Fear could test love, mystery could challenge trust, and danger could shake the heart, but none of it could diminish what we had found in each other. And in that moment, I knew the next step, whatever it would be, would define not just our future, but the depth of our bond, because love, I had learned, wasn't about avoiding danger or living without risk. It was about standing together in the storm, choosing each other in the face of uncertainty, and trusting that together we could weather anything. The weeks following the warehouse encounter were tense, but we had grown stronger together. Every shared glance, every touch, every whispered word solidified our bond. And yet, the shadow of danger never fully lifted. The city, for all its beauty, still felt like a maze of potential threats. Each corner a reminder that the past he carried was never far behind. It was a rainy evening when the final confrontation came, unexpected, brutal, and relentless. We had been walking through the quieter streets near the docks when shadows emerged from the fog. Figures moved swiftly, blocking our path, their faces obscured, but their intent unmistakable. "Stay behind me," he whispered, positioning himself between me and the intruders. His eyes were calm, focused, a stark contrast to the pounding of my heart. I nodded, gripping his hand tightly. Fear surged, but it was tempered by the unshakable trust I had in him. I knew he would protect me. I also knew that together, we were stronger than any threat. The confrontation escalated quickly. Words were exchanged, threats, demands, cryptic warnings, but it was clear that these people had underestimated the bond we shared. He moved with precision, skill, and a quiet ferocity that left me in awe. Yet what struck me most wasn't his strength, it was his unwavering focus on keeping me safe. His concern more for me than for himself. A sudden scuffle erupted. Shadows colliding with movement and rain, splashing in the puddles beneath our feet. I felt my pulse spike, fear and adrenaline mixing in an intoxicating blend. And then, in a moment that felt suspended in time, he caught my hand and pulled me behind cover, his eyes locking with mine. "You trust me?" he asked, voice low and urgent. "Always," I whispered, feeling a fierce certainty that had taken root deep within me. That trust became our weapon, our shield, our bond. Working together, we navigated the danger, anticipating each other's movements, instinctively protecting one another. And when the intruders finally retreated, defeated and frustrated, the rain had slowed to a gentle drizzle, leaving the night silent, save for our ragged breaths and the distant hum of the city. We stood there, soaked, trembling, yet unbroken. He pulled me into his arms, holding me tightly, and I felt an overwhelming rush of relief, love, and connection. For the first time, the city felt safe, not because danger had vanished, but because we had faced it together. "I was so afraid," I whispered, burying my face against his chest. "Afraid of losing you, afraid of everything." He held me closer, his voice a soft murmur. "You don't have to be afraid anymore. Not with me, not ever. We'll face everything together." And in that embrace, I realized the depth of what we had found. Not just love, but a partnership forged in trust, courage, and resilience. It wasn't the absence of fear that defined us, it was the choice to stay together despite it. Over the following weeks, life settled into a rhythm that felt both exhilarating and comforting. We laughed, explored, and dreamed together, sharing quiet moments that were now free of shadows and secrets. The city, once a labyrinth of mystery and danger, had become a canvas for our love, a place where we could build something real, enduring, and beautiful. And then came the twist I hadn't expected. One evening, as we watched the sunset from a quiet rooftop, he turned to me with a mischievous glint in his eye. "Do you want to know the truth?" he asked. I nodded, curiosity piqued. "The truth is, none of this, my secrets, the danger, the mystery, was ever meant to push you away. It was meant to show you how far I'd go to protect someone I love. And you chose to stay. You trusted me, even when the world tried to make you doubt. And that makes you extraordinary." Tears welled in my eyes as I reached for him. "I stayed because I love you. Every part of you, the danger, the mystery, the moments of fear. I wouldn't trade any of it, because it led me to you." He pulled me close, our foreheads touching, hearts beating in sync. "And I love you more than I can ever put into words. You've made me braver, stronger, more alive than I ever thought possible." The city lights shimmered below us, the air warm despite the rain earlier, and for the first time, everything felt complete. The mystery, the danger, the shadows, they were all behind us. What remained was love, pure and unshakable, forged in the fires of adversity and sealed with trust. As we held each other, I realized something profound. Life was unpredictable, full of secrets, surprises, and storms. But love, real, fearless, unwavering love, could weather anything. And with him by my side, I was ready to face whatever came next. The future was unknown. The world was vast and uncertain. But together, we had found something worth everything. A love that was not perfect, not safe, but true. And sometimes, that was all that mattered. All right, everyone. That's all I have for today. If you found this entertaining, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more content like this. Don't forget to comment your thoughts regarding this story. If you want to watch more, please check out our playlist. Finally, a huge thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.